Cheap labor, baby. Sounds familiar, huh? Doctors in South Korea are striking. Let's see why.
South Korea's government has threatened to arrest thousands of striking doctors if they don't return to work by the end of Thursday. The doctors have been protesting against the government's plans to increase the number of people admitted to medical school each year.
The doctors here are saying that they're overworked, they're underpaid, but how it works here is that healthcare is heavily privatised and doctors work for profit. They get paid per procedure. So they don't like the idea of more medical doctors coming into the system because they think that that would just mean more competition for the work that they are carrying out, and so they would see their wages reduced. So that's the sort of two opposing arguments that you really have at the moment playing out between the government and these junior doctors.
Tough situation. The public is pretty anti-doctor striking right now. They're not happy with the behavior of the doctors. But I don't think it's as simple and straightforward as what the news is making it out to be.
How sympathetic is the public?
Not particularly sympathetic.
Yeah, people not being able to get the care that they need or that they had scheduled. It's not gonna be popular. I don't know the conditions for these doctors in Korea, but I know in the US it's pretty horrendous. And part of the weaponization is making out the job of being a physician this calling. That's not about the work and the pay and the lifestyle. And using that as an argument to say, yeah, you signed up for this, that's why we're gonna work you 100 hours per week and pay you less than minimum wage. Things are tough in Korea too, but more on that in a little bit.
And they're saying essentially if the doctors don't come back to work today, they're going to start taking action. Some people are arguing, would they really remove the medical licenses of 9,000 striking doctors?
My understanding is that out of the 9,000 striking doctors, only like 200 and something went back. So that threat from the government didn't really work.
Medical school professors at Kangwon National University are the latest to join thousands of striking doctors in protest against the South Korean government's plan to increase the number of medical students in the coming years. At a briefing with the foreign media in Seoul on Tuesday, one doctor who asked not to be named argued
But here's her face.
By the universities
And a close-up.
Opposition by the medical schools.
Actually, I think
And here's her speaking as well. Like, okay, I guess the mask provides some level of anonymity.
the dean of the medical schools are saying that we don't have the capacity to educate more students. However, the dean of the schools are saying they can accept more.
The strike by about 9,000 junior doctors entered its third week, with no signs of a breakthrough. Medical school professors in other regions have also announced plans to resign if the government pushes ahead with plans to increase the enrollment quota or punish striking doctors.
When I first saw this, I saw what the media is portraying, which is that these doctors don't want more doctors to come in because it's going to reduce their pay because of more competition. So they have 3,000 medical school seats per year in South Korea, and they're increasing that to 5,000 to address the shortages. Now, my spidey senses were tingling a little bit because the media makes it very clear cut that these doctors are greedy assholes, and they already make good money, yet they want more. Something didn't feel quite right, and let's get into that.
The protests, which erupted last week, has split South Korean society. Some are throwing their support behind the striking doctors, but others have criticized their decision to stop work.
나라 거 뭐가 되냐고. 자기도 월급 받고 살면서 왜 그러냐고. 제대로 치료를 해주고 의사도 감싸주고 그래야지. 아픈 사람도 다 치료해줘야지. 잘못해서 한참 잘못했어요.
The people are rightfully very frustrated because they need to be treated. My understanding is that these are I think it's the trainees that are striking, and the attending physicians are still working, but they don't have the help of the junior doctors that they normally would. Let's see what an actual junior doctor has to say.
Protesting doctors say the government should put pay and working conditions at the top of their agenda, rather than raising numbers.
Trainee doctors usually work over 100 hours per week. While some may think we start our shifts at 8 or 9 a.m. in the morning, in reality, we begin at 4 or 6 a.m. in the morning. We earn around $2,300 to $4,600 per month, not tens of thousands. The current medical system in South Korea, which is a great one, is run by forcing cheap trainee doctors to keep grinding.
Sounds familiar, huh?
The mass walkout has disrupted hospital operations and services, with patients being turned away and surgeries postponed in some cities. Protesters argue this proves their point, that intern doctors are relied on as a crucial part of the labour force, who make up at least 40% of staff at some of Seoul's major hospitals.
Cheap labor, baby, all around the world. US, South Korea. I mean, you see these people working 80+ hours, these doctors that get paid jack for what they're actually doing, the value that they're providing. it is a scam. And the other thing is that even though they work those 100 hours, a lot of it is not even stuff that's beneficial to their ultimate training and knowledge and ability to be the best attending physicians that they can. It's because cheap labor, and we could hire some mid-levels to do this work, but you guys are cheaper. And by the way, guys, if anyone ever gives you crap for using the term mid-level, just politely tell them that is a very descriptive term that has been used for a long time without issue, and only in recent years, with the whole scope creep and greed that comes with that, have people try to be hyper woke and say this is offensive and say don't use that term, it's degrading. But it's actually very much appropriate for the level of training. They just don't want you to use that term because it obfuscates their actual level of training. Because yeah, they know they have more training than a nurse, but they have less than a physician. But mid-level is somehow offensive.
A recent poll found about 3/4 of South Koreans approve of the plan for more places at medical schools. They'll be wanting the striking doctors back at work come Friday.
So tricky situation because you have a shortage of doctors. And you think that, hey, we have extra 2,000 more med student seats per year, then we're gonna eventually address that shortage of physicians in the places that need it. Because if you actually go to the capital, the big cities in South Korea like Seoul, you're getting great care and you don't have an issue of shortage of doctors. But when you go to the rural areas, you have that greater shortage, just like in the US, very similar. And you may say that, well, by having more doctors, then it should at least make things better so they're not overworked working 80+ hours per week. But what the striking doctors are saying is that it's not necessarily the case that it's going to improve conditions. And what you need to work on is working conditions and pay, which can be addressed with other means without just hiring more doctors. I don't know that much about South Korean healthcare, but looking at the US as an example, you can hire more ancillary staff. It's not a good use of my time when I'm a surgical resident to be calling for dispo, social work, wound vac companies, etc., when someone else can handle these oftentimes very administrative tasks. Now, I found this article that shows Korea has the second lowest number of physicians among members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, leading to some of the highest doctors' wages among surveyed member nations. Salaried specialists earn an average of $192,000 in 2020, which is 60% more than the OECD average. And Korean GP salaries ranked 6th. For self-employed doctors, private practice, the annual income is $299,000 in 2020. The primary reason for Korean doctors earning more than their counterparts in other OECD nations appears to be the relative scarcity of medical professionals in the face of significant demand for healthcare services. Korea in 2021 recorded 2.6 active clinicians per 1,000 people, including practitioners of Korean traditional medicine per 1,000 people. This figure surpasses only Mexico's 2.5 clinicians. When traditional medicine practitioners are excluded, they're at the bottom among OECD nations. I think this piece right here actually does make a compelling argument that, yeah, we do need a lot more doctors in South Korea. So why are these doctors still upset, and what's the nuance? Because things are rarely as black and white as they seem. So here's my understanding. In the last 5 or 10 years, there's been worsening rural access to healthcare and fewer people wanting to go into certain key specialties, things like internal medicine, OB-GYN, pediatrics, gen surg, thoracic surgery, because of the increasing litigation and decreasing pay. So when you have these massive shortages in these specialties and in these areas, the government's like, hey, let's get 2,000 more med students in, that's gonna solve the problem. There are also a few other changes that they're implementing that benefit larger academic centers, but are less beneficial and actually harm the solo practice, the private practice doctors. Something kind of similar has happened in the US, where we also have a shortage in rural areas. And we're like, well, if we have more NPs and PAs and we open more seats in MD and DO schools, then it's gonna solve this problem. But it doesn't actually happen. Instead, people follow the money, and you got more people now opening med spas in large cities and competing over these highly desirable specialties that pay a lot versus addressing that shortage in rural areas. I think that doctors largely have a branding problem, and the public doesn't really like doctors or trust doctors as much as I think they should. And it seems to be the same case in South Korea because, I mean, doctors striking, how's that gonna be popular with the public? They need access to care, and it's just bad optics. Which raises the question, nurses have managed to strike in the US and are still viewed very favorably by the public. And I'm not sure why that is, but I think physicians can probably learn a thing or two from the efforts of nurses, which has been highly effective. They have a lot more protections and better working conditions. Still needs a lot of improvement, don't get me wrong, but certain protections about breaks and hours and things like that that physicians just don't have in the slightest. Even those 80-hour work week restrictions are a complete joke and are blown through all the time. Anyway, do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below.